Well, while we're talking about like the black community and like black, I hate to say conservatism because in some ways, like I feel like I'm conservative in some things, but I want to say like some of the black community doing things like going to Black Lives Matter marches, but then not saying Black trans lives matter. I will never forget
Mm,
after, like during the movement, it was like a week or so after George Floyd's murder. I remember seeing all of these men
Yeah,
in,
the barbershop video.
I don't know if it was I think it was like a convenience store, and there are at least 15 men beating this trans woman up for just being who she is. And how do we deal with that as a black community? Because there's such a stigma with, being black and what defines a woman or a man or whoever's in between. What does that, how do you feel about that?
I think every community kind of has that like disconnect.
Right.
There's this like stigma with gender norms that I don't think has anything to do with race, unfortunately.
That's the thing is I've always viewed it as more societally and religiously rooted than
Mm,
racially rooted. But I do think that it's very hypocritical to say Black Lives Matter, but Black gays don't matter, Black trans
mm-hmm.
don't matter. I think that that is very hypocritical, but I don't know if it is necessarily a race issue.
Mm.
That is exactly what I was going to say. It's, it is ironic that, Black folks are being marginalized and we know what it feels like. I'm about to say they, but we know what it feels like. And to be treated in a certain way because you're cloaked in something that's different from someone else. And to see somebody, well, first, whether I was any, black, white, Hispanic, or anything, to see somebody, a trans walking down, as long as they aren't bothering me, what the hell does it have to do? As
Right.
long as it's not hurting me and it's not, so what?
Right.
Move along. Keep scrolling. Stay in your lane.
That's the weird thing is that I feel like just the idea of something being different is a challenge to people. And so when the black community goes, there's men, and there's women, and there shouldn't be anything in between. You shouldn't want to go from one to the other. Is you just have that because there's like that's different, and that's not like what I grew up with. But at the same time, it's like how can you say that, but then also be like Black Lives Matter, and say, but it doesn't. That ideology doesn't apply when we're talking about race.
Right.
Yeah, because they're not thinking. They're not thinking. It's the same. It's not the exact same thing, but it is to a certain extent. If you talk to someone who is, on that other side, you will find that there is a kin there. There is similarity because you're marginalized and placed on the peripheral because, and having to live your life in a certain way just to get by and live your life.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing.
And I mean, and I did notice that a couple of times on the news, they were mentioning that, or I'd see it, in the newspaper or on Facebook. And, it is a problem, but I don't know. That's just another one of the things that we have to put on our desk, that we another file that America has to address. among many. They're
But
buried in files.
do you really think it's an American thing, or do you think that it's a Black thing too? Because at times I feel like the Black community does not amplify those queer voices like that. So therefore, we're totally, we're like, ugh, what is that? Gross. No, we don't want to see it. So people like, I was on Jazzy's podcast and I made it, I made it a point to use Luther Vandross as my song of the week. And like, he died in the closet, And as talented as Luther Vandross was, we as a Black community didn't fully embrace who he actually was, where he was at these concerts singing about women and trying to make this baby making music, as what the Black community calls it. And meanwhile, that's not what he's about,
Mm-hmm.
Well, he just wasn't living his truth, and that is not. I think that you're 100% right, but I think that is more of. First, I think that your expectation from the Black community is because we have this experience of being treated a certain way, we should be more understanding. That's number one. Number two, the Black community always has it didn't just, I'm sure everybody knows this, it didn't just start with, Luther Vandross. I mean, if you go to Black church and see the organist or they are and they have a big range from being very masculine to, I guess, a little bit feminine or what. But everybody knew what the deal was, and everybody didn't talk about it. And that's the problem is that we need to, in the Black community, we need to start talking and come into the 21st century in terms of sexuality, and understanding sexuality. It's not something that everybody doesn't have to not talk about, because in our own families, I'm sure that each one of us has, a gay cousin or uncle or something, and nobody ever really talks about it except the two aunts or grandmothers on the side. They will, yeah, well, girl, and those kinds of conversations.
That's the best friend aunties. That's a big stereotype in the Black community.
Yeah. Auntie's best friend.
But,
mm-hmm.
but those are the
that
things
she's lived with for 40 years.
Yeah, those that we have to change. And you're right, Brother Luther, and he's like, I listen to Luther almost religiously every week because that's my brother. Nobody could blow like him. Yeah, but everyone knew, though. That was the thing. Everybody knew. Oh my God, I know why you're laughing. That is wrong. I'm done. I'm done with y'all.
I didn't.
Wait, Lord, you're making a point. You're making a point.
I didn't get it.
Yeah. No, I don't want to know it because
Brandon made me laugh. I'm so sorry.
It was something that
I'm
sorry. We're like talking about this serious matter.
Both of you dirty birdies. I'm gonna put both of you, and I'm just gonna talk to Jazzy.
Oh no.
No, you know what I think also? I think that a lot of that has to deal with the queer community more so than the Black community. So I don't feel like the queer community celebrates Black queerness.
Do you think that Black queerness specifically needs to be celebrated, like in exception to just pride in the queer community? Like in addition to, like, is that something that we should we mix the two things?
I think we have to mix it. But even in Black History Month, Marsha P. Johnson, who started the Stonewall riots, we don't mention her in Black History Month.
Mention her. No.
She is a Black queer person I want to say, yes, she was a drag queen. She
trans
wasn't
woman.
trans. Was she
A
trans? She
trans
wasn't
woman.
trans. Was she trans?
I think she was trans, yeah.
Right. But
She was
And this,
also killed
we did not
mysteriously.
find out. I personally, like, that's the thing, education. Like, like, I did not find out about Marsha P. Johnson until like probably 7 years ago. And that should have been something that was taught in Black History Month.
Do you
I think she
likewise
should be
feel like
right
someone like
alongside
RuPaul
with
should also
Martin Luther
be?
King.
Do you likewise feel like someone like RuPaul should also be mentioned for her impact on the queer community? And
Absolutely.
here's the thing: when you put it like that, I agree with you, 100%.
then
We're
you're gonna
constant.
asking a lot of I don't know if I want to say this on camera.
No, say it.
No, but it's you're asking it kind of a change in mindset that has to happen in the Black community, and not just in mindset, but about a lot of views. Because you're asking a lot of very religious people.
Here's my issue, though, is real quick, is that I feel like the Black community uses words like Black pride and Black excellence and all those different things to define itself and to exceptionalize itself. But whenever, at least for me, whenever I've seen Black people whom I specifically know interact with anyone who they perceive as gay, trans, on any sort of sexual identity or sexual spectrum that isn't like being a cisgendered straight person, they're seen as weak.
Well, but that's their
like
problem.
Literally, it's seen as being weak-minded, weak of spirit, all those different things. And I think that is inherently wrong.
Yeah, it is. And you're right. But that's their ignorance. Because they don't, you're not, the only way to change that, I think that whether they be Black or white or any, there is that misconception, when you meet someone who's gay, you make assumptions based on who they are, based on that they're gay. Because everybody meets, there's still the stigma that with gay people that you go, that to be gay is to be effeminate. And to be gay means you don't like football and you don't sit and watch football, or you don't like baseball. Well, I defy you on that, because I have friends. I like baseball and football. I sit and watch it and follow it. Yep. And one of my best friends, you'll catch him every Sunday. That's what that's what he's doing. But it's all of these things. It's things like that people believe. It's the same thing. I think that folks on white folks will see Black folks on TV and they've never been around them, and they make an assumption that that's who they are. When no, that's not who they are. You need to have the real experience. Those are people on TV that are paid actors. Those are scenes that are written, okay? And yes, what's on TV sometimes does mirror what happens in real life, but that is not the sum total of who we are, or who or any group of people are.
So in that instance, then you could say that it's the same kind of learned behavior that like racism is.
Yeah.
Learned ignorance that you just inherently have growing up.
I think that, and also I think for the Black community, there's another component, and that's, is our, our faith, faith in God. And
scripture, and
that homosexuality goes against everything that we talk about in church. And, some people would choose to say, that's exactly why I don't like the church and this and that and the other. Well, I differ, because I don't, I'm a Christian, and nobody's going to tell me any different, because I don't think that God doesn't love me because I'm gay. Now, you can sit there and you can try and convince me of that, but it's never going to happen. So take your breath. You know, but yeah, that's it. I think that's all I have to say.
Because the way that I looked at it was like the religious part, which you brought up and I brought up before too. But I think another issue that we haven't touched upon that has, I feel like, personally affected me in my life with it is the toxic masculinity in the Black male community, specifically the Black male community. And even though I am a cisgendered, straight Black male, the whole conception of what it means to be a man, because I do have effeminate qualities about myself that I'm actually exceptionally proud of. Like, I think I'm a fairly good listener when people talk. Like, I want to hear their point of view. I want to have empathy for them, but that is viewed as a feminine trait. And so throughout my life, and maybe you guys can also speak to this too, I feel like I've had emotional challenges to my own manhood brought on by external expectations from the Black male community that I've not met. And in turn, that makes me internally devalue myself. Yeah. And I'm not even gay, or I'm straight, like literally.
Right.
And so I can't even imagine what it is like for anyone who is on any area of the spectrum that isn't straight and having to deal with that.
Wow, you make
that's a really, really good point.
Make a very good point, and I don't want to monopolize the whole time, so someone else go ahead.
Well, no,
I don't feel like I can speak on that.
Well, I mean, there is a female component to it also.
Let me just say this. I will say this. Boy, that was so loaded what you said.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I've genuinely felt probably since I had any conception of the transition from being a child to a man. So probably from the age of like middle school, like 12.
13, yeah.
Okay, this is what I was going to say. I think I've always thought that one of the problems is for men, is they have to put on this suit of armor, this bravado, and when they go out and they have to be manly, and they have to sit a certain way, and they have to talk a certain way, and
it's the performance of being a man.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And people care more about the performance than the actual person under that suit of armor. Yeah,
but that is, I think, to a certain extent, very an American concept of men. Because if you see men from other countries, from Europe, or you watch Asian men interact with other, or you just men from any other country besides the US, you will see a certain kind of camaraderie with them. Don't see with American men.
I mean, there's that whole thing like gay or European. Like that's like a literal like stereotype.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a stereotype because, well, America in general has a sort of, has a toxic masculinity problem.
Yeah. And and sometimes I guess I don't like some of the labels, because when we put labels on things like toxic masculinity, and then that's offensive to those guys and then they go, okay, well, she wants me to be this way, she wants me to be that way, and if I'm not this way, then but the second point I wanted to make was that the other thing is that with fathers and sons, and And this is, you know, you could probably go to a lot of straight men and ask them, you know, what kind of relationship do they have with their father? One of the things that, you know, I like and always cherish with my father is that my father always knew that he loved me. And I knew it not because he said it or he didn't do it in a certain way. He was not a perfect man, but he would hug me, he would kiss me on the forehead, and he would tell me. So I never had a doubt about that. But a lot of men, and I think that with men, especially men who are straight, if they have to have that kind of interaction so that they can know how to be with their own boys and teach their own boys that this is not indicative of any kind of sexual contact. It's just me expressing my love for you. And that's okay. And that's kind of, to use your your vernacular, that toxic masculinity. Men, because they don't get that, they're not getting those kind of interaction with other men, and especially the first man that you have contact with is who? Your father. And that is your teacher. That is who you pattern everything after, you know. And I've been fortunate, you know, my brother, you know, he's straight, and a lot of people, you know, will ask him, are you gay? No, but he's in theater and he's very affectionate. He lets his feelings show, and that's okay, you know. And I've known, you know, a lot of guys that were straight and were dancers, and a few of them I knew, you know, they were very comfortable around gay men because they were secure with who they were.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the key. You have to know who you are, and as long as you're secure with who you are, who I am is not any reflection on who you are. It doesn't have, and I hate to simplify it, but because it's not simple. It's not simple to do, because you've got all these outside things that are telling you that you have to be a certain way, and you have to sit a certain way, and you can only play with G.I. Joe. You can't play with Barbie dolls.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you're trying to figure this all out. And all of that it's just crazy. I remember working at one of my first professional jobs was at amusement parks performing. And there was this one guy who was straight, and he had a voice. I kid you not, he sounds like a girl. He talked like this. And everybody used to make fun of him. They used to make so much fun of him. And they would say he was gay. And I'm like, the dude, he's not. That's God. That's the way God made him.
Mm-hmm.
And he probably would do, you know, like what you were mentioning, you know, earlier, giving doubts to him, his own self, because people are saying this about him, but he can't change it.
Right.
And so this is, you know, it's not just, yeah, it is heightened, I think, sometimes maybe in the Black community, but I think it is a problem, you know, it's an American problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing is, it's funny that you brought up the whole being a performer example, because like I remember back when I first started performing around middle school, early high school, I went from being that kid who played baseball, soccer, football, karate, all these sports, into just doing theater and just doing music. And I remember my straight friends at the beginning were like, dude, why are you doing this? And I couldn't just be like, because I just really love being on stage. Like, it's the greatest feeling I've ever had. I had to be like, dude, there are like so many single hot girls here. Why are you not doing it? And I had to justify it being cool.
Right.
Rather than just being able to be like, I just really love
like
doing this. Like, this gives me a feeling like nothing else.
Right.
Your strength, you know, that you stuck to what you know, what was right for you. You know, screw them, you know, what they're saying. And that's the kind of thing that it takes, you know, for young people to have, to say, well, okay, well, you can go with that, but this is what I want to do. This is what makes me happy right now.
And my issue is that I, at least personally, feel like none of the patriarchal figures in my life gave me that specific brand of confidence. They empowered me in other ways, but anything that was viewed as like being a feminine in that particular way was not something that I was empowered to be proud of. They didn't necessarily detract from it in any way, but it was noticeably lacking.
Yeah, and that if you're not encouraging it and you're not pushing it, I'm sure if you had been playing football, they'd have been there at every game. But did they see every show?
And I'm not trying to be like my male figures never supported me. That's not what I'm saying either. But
but
it was a noticeable difference when I transitioned from doing it early on. Now is a very different story. Now is a very, very different story because they see how much I do care about it.
Right.
But that had to be taught to them through me, which it should be the other way around, I feel like.
No, right. It should.
Wow. Jazzy?
But you were saying that there's a female Tamir.
I was saying what?
You said that there's a female part of it when Jazzy said, oh, well, I can't speak to that. And you said that there was a part of it.
I think that the feminine part of it, and I could be wrong here, but I think it comes in with the female intervention being like, why are you putting femininity in a box? In that same way that I felt like held back from expressing my feminine side, I feel like females are confined to the box of femininity.
Oh, yes. Okay, I got you. Well,
in the Black community specifically, like any female who shows any masculine traits, she's a butch, and butch is used in a derogatory way.
Oh, it is. And hearing you talk about this, it's just making me think why, again, it's with the labels, feminine and masculine. People just are.
Yeah.
If there's a softer side to you, okay. And if there's a rougher side to her, okay. Maybe she's, I've seen some women that were married to men and, and I say, oh my gosh, she's a little butch, but she's married. And I'm thinking she's a lesbian, and she's not. She's just, a little bit butch, and that's okay. It works for them. But, and even I am conditioned to think a certain way. And one would think that I'm not, but I've lived in America for, a certain number of years. And so I think that we even have to do the work on our own selves because we think that we're free thinkers and very liberal in our thinking. But sometimes we have some of the same things that we're guilty of some of the same things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Brandon, Jazzy, you guys have anything to say?
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, there have definitely been some instances where I feel like I've had to unlearn behaviors. Like, I remember growing up, my mom would never let me leave the house without earrings on. Especially if I was wearing my hair back or like up, because she would be like, well, you look like a boy if you don't have earrings on.
I wouldn't let you leave home without your earrings either.
Or even shaving your legs and armpits. Like,
it's earrings.
Women feel forced to shave their legs and armpits.
Oh my gosh. Armpits?
Here's the thing. But here's my thing, is I'm someone who wholeheartedly believes if that's you and you're going to be sanitary about it, if I'm a boy and I'm expected to be sanitary about having hairy armpits, if a female wants to also, and she's gonna
What's
be
the
clean.
difference? It's the same hair. Like, it's the same hair. It's okay for you to not shave your armpits, but I have to?
And like
Yes,
that's what I
ma'am.
mean.
Yes, ma'am.
See, that's where it's not.
is a whole different conversation, and it's gross when either gender does it, or when anyone does it. Not either gender. Sorry about that. When anybody does it.
I'm kidding.
Here's the thing: is as a man, I do shave my armpits. I don't care
I do
because that's what
not.
makes me feel me.
But no, I'm cool with that.
But you see what I mean? Like it's stuff like that like we have such a big reaction to, and it's almost controversial for me to say there's a girl with hairy legs.
No, yeah.
Yeah, you want to see my legs right now? They're a little ashy too, but.
Oh no.
That's what I mean. I feel like we need to, as an American society, and especially as the Black community specifically, because we know what it feels like to be ostracized.
Yeah.
To do some serious thinking and make actual substantial change.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
We need to look in the mirror.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or as they say in church, clean your own house.
100%.
Someone said on Drag Race, some of the strongest women that I know have balls. Some of the strongest men that I know don't have any.
Do they mean that literally or figuratively?
Both.
That's the thing is, to me, that is a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Both. You know. And what is a man and what is a woman, you know, and what really defines that, you know.
And that's the thing, as much as liberals get made fun of for the whole statement of like live your truth, that at the end of the day, that's what it means. Be you, be proud of who you are in any regard. Do what makes you feel the most unequivocally you, and screw anyone else who challenges you on that and doesn't love you for that.
Right.
Because why would I want to live a life that's inauthentic, you know?
Right. So don't shave your legs, ladies. Okay.
Unless you want to. If you
Unless
want
you
to,
want to.
that's your choice. Your body, your choice.
That's my
Come
confession.
on.
I've known females who are like, I have to. And I'm like, I get that. And then I know
I
females who are
get
like,
it. Yeah.
fuck it, I'm not. And I'm like, yeah, all right, you cool.
Yeah.
But you know, we and that goes back to what you guys were saying. Like we've been trained to think that that's what a woman should do, or like men are allowed to grow beards and stuff. Meanwhile, like I know, like we all have some females in our families who like had to shave because they got a mustache, you know,
the tweezers and
right.
And that's the thing. I literally remember being in like elementary school and like having girls who were hairier, and I was just like, what is all that? And like making fun of them because that was what I thought was cool.
Yeah.
What I thought, and like that's me at the age of like elementary school, like 6 years old.
Same.
Because that's what I'm seeing in media. That's what I'm seeing my family members do.
Right. Right. We were all there.
And looking back, I'm like, I've said horrible things to people, even before they had a concept of who they were. Like, even before they had the ability to live their truth. Like, literally just for something that biologically naturally happened.
Right. It's funny that you say that because, like, when I was in middle school, too, I just had a completely different style than what I have now. I was, you know, wearing the baggy pants. I had the jersey on.
Wear that Timberland.
Right.
That bar.
Boo boo. Y'all remember Boo Boo?
I see that person.
Yeah. Cornrows.
I can see it because I went to the same school. But
right. But then, like, and but then like that evolved to like, you know, now like sometimes I might wear a high heel, you know, like I
Yes.
just feel like comfortable with who I am and what, you know, being a
But
I
man.
feel like for me, my like gender expression has been more rooted in my sexuality rather than my race.
Mm,
Like I don't feel like I owe any kind of femininity to being black, but as a lesbian, I do sometimes feel like, am I more of like a tomboy or am I more of like a femme? That's like where the gender line is kind of blurred for me.
mm. I might have to save that for another panel. That's
Hmm.
another panel. Yeah.
That's a
And
whole
like,
nother.
I mean, like fashion is like a whole other thing. But like, yeah, similarly to that, like my current, even though I'm not represented right now, is more like prep or urban prep, which
Right.
for the most part in the black community, people look at me like, yo, he's a black conservative.
Yeah.
I don't see that in
Like
your
this boy is
style.
from like Alabama.
Yeah.
I see you as
I see that.
like a hipster.
Yeah. But that's even hipster. Hipster is fashion sense is not traditionally accepted by the mainstream black.
Mm, yeah,
Right.
that's true.
Right.
It's kind of starting to get there because a couple rappers like Lil Uzi
Hmm.
and like someone like Lil Boat. You don't know Yachty?
You know, I don't know none
No.
of.
Little boat.
Lil Bow Wow.
Little Romeo.
Lil that's who I know.
No, but some more mainstream black rappers are more so or
Mainstream?
like
The
Kodak
baby,
Black,
Lil
like that.
baby,
The baby.
Lil baby,
Yeah.
big baby.
Some people are making it cool, but they're considered like alternative black. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
All black.
They're not like that, like Will Smith, like yeah, like that's our guy.
West
Kind of,
Philadelphia.
yeah.
And that's the
What's
thing. Mainstream is
that?
becoming more like wide range in that, you know, thankfully. Because before it was like you had to be like Ja Rule, DMX, all those sort of things. And
Denzel
that,
Washington, like that,
right.
like
Right.
that archetype of being a black man.
Right. And now like it's okay. Like you can wear black nail polish. You can maybe wear a skirt. Thank you, Jaden Smith. You know, like
Hmm.
things like
Yeah.
that. People just being in the room and
James Smith,
expressing
Young Thug.
themselves and you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lawrence, you yeah.
Huh? No, y'all just went over my head. So,
He's like
Basically,
skirts. What?
there are a lot of newer age black people who are making it cool to be not what's seen as not cool. Is I guess the point we're trying to make.
Right.
no, and I get it. I think it's the now. I think that people, that young people, you know, when I say that, I'm talking about the young teenagers right now. They have I mean, when I was in school, if a guy came with a skirt at school, he was labeled as a homosexual and he was harassed. It just did not happen.
Hmm.
Right.
And when I was at um, working over there with Lori, just a lot of things that I seen, I'm like, oh my God, it's high school has progressed. Because when it was just not that way back then. And I mean, you think there are boxes now that people put you in. Back then, it was, you really had your box was smaller. And if
Right.
out, of your box, people, labeled you and stuff. And I don't know, I guess just when I was in school and I remember, I hadn't even figured out what, my sexuality was, but everybody else had figured it out for me and were telling me. And I now, I resent that because that is
Mm,
it's almost as if they're creating the identity for me. You know, it took a long time for me to work through all of that and figure it out, you know, and it was tough, you know, because you don't, I think that, you know, it's hard growing up being young, you know, being, you know, teenagers, but boy, having that on you, you know, and you're like, okay, well, I don't know what a punk is.
So here's my whole thing with the labels argument and why I tend to like labels. For me personally, I can't speak for everyone on this, but because it lets me say, this is who I am. I'm black. I'm straight. I'm an effeminate boy. And it also lets me know that there are other people who are like me.
Well,
And it gives me a sense of community and belonging.
Okay. All right.
So like or even like to bring it back to like art and media, when someone's like, Rent is a show for gays or a gay show, I'm like, a gay pride show? Yeah. This is a show to give me a sense of belonging, to make me realize that I'm not alone in this. So I personally find strength in the labeling of things, but I also see where the over labeling of it can get a little bit nebulous.
Right.
Yeah. And
I think that it's just human nature to label things. Like, things can't exist and us not name it, categorize it, put it in a box with a stamp on it. You just can't do it as people.
True.
That's what we've been trained to do.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe if we were trained the opposite way, we would have a different outlook on everything, you know. On what, going back to that, on what a man is, on what a woman is, on what it is to be black, white, whatever. We all just humans.
Right.
Well, maybe not so much.
It can be restrictive, and
Right.
that's problematic.
Right.
Maybe it's not so much the labeling, but forcing people to be something that they're not.
Yeah. When you force people into the stereotypes of their labels, I think that it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, it is, labeling is a way of identifying something, and I get that part of it. It's when we sometimes I think that people improperly label, and they don't know what they're talking about. But it's, I don't know. That's probably something I have to give a little bit more thought to. Because in one way, yeah, it is. I get it. It's necessary, and it depends on what you're talking about, where it, you know, in terms of when it is necessary.
Like everything, I think there's good and bad to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true.
Right.